Hey guys, this is Dave, and today we are going to be checking out this, the Kefine QUATIO. Of course, Kefine makes two of my all-time favorite sub $100 IEMs, the Delcy and Delcy AE, and I have a few other favorites like the Yafu Explorer, the EA500LM, but if I'm being honest, there hasn't really been any exciting releases in this $100 price range, at least that I've heard lately, maybe with the exception of the Defiant, because that one is tuned quite nicely. But what about the QUATIO? Does it bring anything exciting or new to the table at this price point? Well, that's the question I'm going to try and answer in today's video. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get started. So the QUATIO is priced at $129, and this is everything that you get in the box with it. You get the IEMs, you also get this modular cable that comes with two interchangeable termination options, a 3.5 single-ended and then this 4.4 balanced termination. They've also included a very basic case, lots of ear tips, and then two ear tip cases. And then last but not least, the tuning nozzles can be removed and replaced. So of course, they have included two additional sets of tuning nozzles. The IEMs came with the silver nozzles pre-installed, but they've also included a pair of gold nozzles and a pair of black nozzles as well. And of course, I will talk more about those in the sound segment. It has a hybrid driver configuration with two dynamic drivers, and then it also has two balanced armature drivers. It has an all-metal housing, and the housing has kind of an egg shape to it. The build quality is actually very, very good, although it is a little on the thick side, but it is still what I would consider to be maybe about average size, so it should fit most ears just fine. They fit my ears quite well, and I had no issues achieving a proper and stable fit. Plus, I was also able to have quite a few longer listening sessions without experiencing any discomfort or ear pain. So build and comfort are good. However, I can't say much for the design. And while I can certainly appreciate a good minimal design, the QUATIO, I guess it's just a little too minimal for me. I do, however, like the cable a lot. It's got this gunmetal gray color to it. It feels very robust. The build quality is what I would consider to be very, very good at this price point. It is maybe a little thick, but most importantly, it's still pretty soft and manageable. Plus, it doesn't have too many issues with memory. So this is a really good cable for this price point, in my opinion. So the build quality of both the IEMs and cable are very good, although the design is a little plain. Fit and comfort are good. It's decently accessorized, but of course, the question is, how does it sound? Well, let's talk about that. Okay, so let's quickly go over the tuning nozzles. So again, it came with the silver nozzles pre-installed, but what's interesting is that while usually the stock nozzles end up being usually my nozzle of choice, that was not the case this time. I actually ended up settling on the black nozzle, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But basically, each of these nozzles will give you a slight variation of a Harman style, or maybe a modified Harman style tuning, but with slightly more relaxed upper mids, with the black nozzle offering the most bass energy of the three, and also having maybe a more relaxed upper mid-range, and the gold nozzle is going to have the least amount of bass energy and the most upper mid-range energy. So of course, that means the gold nozzle is going to have a more vocal forward presentation, and then the silver nozzle is going to kind of land right in between those two. So its bass energy is a little less than the black nozzle, but slightly more than the gold nozzle, and then its upper mids are a little more relaxed than the gold nozzle, but are more energetic than the black nozzle. Now, I will say, I do feel like both the silver and gold nozzles are technically a little more balanced sounding than the black. And I would also say they generally have more mid-range clarity and are just cleaner sounding. Plus, you are probably going to get slightly better technical performance as far as separation and layering, again, with the gold and the silver nozzles. But at the same time, I'm not getting the engagement and the life and excitement that the black filter brings. Although I would say I think the silver filters would probably be my next pick, then the gold. But at the end of the day, I ended up settling on the black filters because the other two either just had too much upper mid-range energy or just not enough bass. So that said, the rest of my impressions are going to be based primarily on the black nozzles. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with the bass. And again, the black nozzles are going to give you the most bass energy of the three. And while I would consider the bass to be maybe a little north of neutral, as bass boosts go, to me, this is actually pretty mild. And interestingly, the Delcy and Delcy AE had more bass, and that was kind of what really attracted me to those sets. So again, this is still north of neutral, but for me, I just wish there was a little more bass energy. Now, in terms of bass tuning, I would say they have struck a good balance between the bass and sub bass. Although I guess the argument could be made that it has a slightly more mid-bass focused bass tuning, because I did notice the kick impact was just a little more emphasized, although at the same time, I never felt like it was lacking sub bass energy. Now, as far as tactility, bass texture, I would say it's good for this price point. And while I did notice just a small amount of bass bleed into the lower mids, I did feel like it was minimal. And to me, while I do wish, again, I wish there was a little more bass energy, I also feel like the overall bass quality is maybe not the best, but certainly stand out for this price point. And I was kind of left with the same impression about the mid-range as well, because I just feel like they got a lot right, both from a tuning perspective and also from a balance perspective, because it's able to accurately and naturally reproduce vocals and instruments, but also from a tonal balance standpoint with the black nozzle, while it is maybe a little bit bass light, again, just below my preference, and maybe slightly mid-forward for my taste, I still feel like it works quite well, at least for this price point. And I was also kind of impressed with the mid-range clarity and detail, and then combined with that low mid and mid bass texture, the bass dynamics, the bass extension, both from a technical and tuning standpoint, it really does check a lot of boxes. And then going back to its balance. So if I'm just kind of listening to both the bass and the mid-range and how well they work together and how well they balance each other out and complement each other, I do still feel like they work well together. So all that said, the bass quality is there, although I do wish there was a little more of it. The mid-range quality is there, plus you've got, again, good tonal balance and cohesiveness between those two areas of the tuning. And it's not just good, it's actually kind of standout in my opinion for this being priced at $129. But what about the treble? Well, that's where things started to fall just a little short of my expectations. Not that the treble is not good, or at least about on par with the competition, but it is lacking a little energy. And while it is maybe smoother sounding and natural sounding, and I think it would also probably appeal to those of you who might be a little more treble sensitive, in my opinion, when I am kind of weighing the treble energy against the mids and the bass, I feel like the treble is kind of having to take a back seat to the rest of the tuning. And again, this might appeal to some of you, and yes, this is a preference thing, but for me, it does seem to be lacking just a little bit in upper treble energy. And while I do still think they did an excellent job with the bass and the mids, if they had brought that treble energy up even just a little bit more, I think this possibly could have become one of my new favorites around this price point. And there is pretty decent lower treble energy around, I guess 6 or 7K. It's not sharp or harsh. I think they played it pretty safe in the lower treble there, but things start dropping off after that. So again, while things do sound very natural and even smooth, it doesn't provide much in the way of maybe treble detail and that airiness that I like to hear, especially in some live recordings. And then as far as its technical performance, because of the relaxed approach they took with the treble, it does sound natural. However, there is going to be maybe a little bit of a trade-off in terms of treble detail. Although I would say it is still what I would consider to be maybe about average for this price point in terms of staging, imaging, and layering. Now, I should say I'm okay with its technical performance being where it is, because this does do so many other things very well for this price point. And yes, maybe if they had increased the treble energy a little more, they could have squeezed some perceived detail out of the Quatio. And yes, it may have even brought it closer to my tuning preference. But I also know that you have to be careful at this price point not to push your luck with the treble, because it seems like, again, with this price point, it can get tricky, and it can sometimes come at the expense of overall treble quality. And you might find that with that additional treble energy can come sharpness, harshness, and just maybe a general lack of treble control or refinement. And the Yaksha actually comes to mind because I felt like while it did have good treble energy, it had other issues with the treble that I felt maybe set it back a little, which brings me to comparisons. So as I said in my introduction, it's been a while since I've had an IEM within this price range that has come across my review desk that has surprised me. Again, maybe with the exception of the Defiant. And what I liked about the Defiant was that it was just a pretty well done V shape for this price point. Unfortunately though, the Defiant is out on loan right now, so that's why I don't have it out on the desk. And I think if I were to choose between the two, so the Defiant and the Quatio, I would probably actually choose the Defiant, even though they are really, really close. But the Defiant does bring maybe a little more treble energy to the picture, which I do like. And then I also have the Explorer and Magic 1 on the table. Both are very good IEMs for this price point, but both also have similar issues as the Quatio as far as their lack of treble energy. They do still have more treble energy than the Quatio. And then as far as the Explorer, because the upper mids are a little more relaxed and it has a little more bass than the Quatio, I find the Explorer to be just a little more enjoyable for me. But it is a little bit of a different story with the Magic 1, because the Magic 1 has less bass, it has more upper mid forwardness than the Quatio, so I would prefer the Quatio over the Magic 1 hands down. And then of course, my favorite IEM under $100 is still the Delcy AE with the silver nozzle, which I don't have that on hand at the moment either. But what's interesting is that I even feel like the Delcy AE is lacking treble energy, but it doesn't really matter because it does so many other things so well for this price point. Its bass quality is very, very good. But what I'm still so really impressed with even today by the Delcy AE is its mid-range. It's just so natural sounding. Plus, it has really good vocal clarity, but without being overly forward. And while again, I do wish it had a little more treble energy, it still has more treble than what the QUATIO has to offer. And while it does have maybe a little bit of an edge to its treble presentation, it's actually surprisingly controlled and refined. So it brings good levels of detail and just generally good technical performance, but it doesn't ever reach the point of becoming harsh or sharp or fatiguing. Basically, it has the treble I wish the QUATIO would have had. And really, the Delcy AE is still my favorite sub $100 IEM. So then where does that leave the QUATIO? Well, I think the QUATIO is a very good IEM for this price point, but I've still got a few other sets that come a little closer to my preference. The Delcy AE, the Explorer, the Defiant, and another one that I like is the SIMGOT A500LM. And while it does take more of a fun or V-shape approach to its tuning, and it can at times start to edge maybe towards becoming fatiguing, I still feel like it's got a lot of other good qualities. And it's also a pretty technical IEM for this price point as well. That said, I think I might actually prefer the overall tuning of the QUATIO over the EA500LM. So I guess at the end of the day, the QUATIO, while not maybe being the best option at the $100 price point, is still a very good option, especially if you are just looking for a set with good balance, good naturalness, and while it is maybe on the safe side, and I've even heard it referred to as being boring, if I'm being honest, it did not strike me as boring. I still feel like it engaged me to a degree, enough at least to allow me to connect with my music for sure. So it's maybe not the best set out there for this price point, but I do think it is a very solid set for sure. All right, I think that does it for this review. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch. If you like my content, please take a second and hit that subscribe button. If you would also please let me know what you think in the comment section. Please like this video, please share this video. I hope you have an awesome day.